How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
My fellow Americans, welcome. It is Eric Erickson. I am broadcasting to you live from Sea Island, Georgia. I'm here for a super secret meeting I was asked to speak at, and I'm looking forward to it. And I can't give you the details, but they have put me up at this place. They clearly thought I was going to bring my family, because I am in this place. I got a living room with a fireplace, and I got 2 bedrooms. I got 2 full bathrooms. I got a balcony that looks out over the river. It is I forget how nice this place is, and I got to be honest with you, if you've never been, so it's the Cloisters at Sea Island. It's too fancy for me. Like, this is very comfortable. This is very nice, but it also, I don't know, I'm never comfortable here. I need to come back more, because I've only come for conferences. I've never just come back, but I don't think my family would like it. This is the sort of place where people bring their 3-year-olds in designer clothes, and that's just not my style. Like, you come during the summer and you see people and they've got their 3 and 4-year-olds in like Ralph Lauren and stuff. It's like, go to Walmart. Your kid's going to outgrow that in 2 months. Why are you putting your kid in fancy clothes? That's just not the way I grew up, and I'm not comfortable with it. The people here, don't get me wrong, the staff are incredible. The place is beautiful. It's very quiet. It's very intimate. It's very private, but also it's like really fancy. I just like, even so, there's this place near me it's Reynolds Plantation, except you're not allowed to say plantation anymore, but it's Reynolds Plantation. They got a Ritz-Carlton, and it's, I don't know, there's kind of a laid back vibe there and stuff that I don't know. I feel judged every time I come here, but it's really nice. It's really nice. In any event, that's not why you're here. You're here for this. So I was running the numbers. I started in radio January 11th of 2011. It was the night, some of you, if you're in Atlanta, you'll remember this. There was a massive ice storm. This is not the Snowpocalypse 2014 where everybody was snowed in and stuck on the interstate. This is in 2011. An ice storm hit in the middle of the night. And I was being hired by WSB. I'd actually been at an event in Kiowa Island, South Carolina, had to drive home and drop off my family and then go to Atlanta, because I didn't have a home studio set up or anything in Macon where I lived. In fact, they didn't even want me to tell people I was in Macon. I was on Atlanta radio. I had to talk about Atlanta. I got a subscription to Atlanta Magazine so I could start reading up on the restaurants. That's how I discovered, among other things, Table in Maine, my favorite restaurant. But in any event, so there was ice. I had to walk from the hotel they put me in that night to the station because the ice was so bad. And then I wound up having to sleep on the floor at the station for a couple nights before I could get back into a hotel. Slid my car up on the curb at one point. I had a bunch of drunk Georgia Tech students at a Taco Mac help me push off the ice, went in and had several beers with them. It was a wild week. And I was literally in a studio for a week. Didn't even have phone lines. So I was doing a radio show, my very first time ever doing radio, 5 nights. From 9 p.m. to midnight, and I had no phones, and the only internet was what I could get off my phone, because even the station internet was out because the ice had taken everything out. It was wild. So I haven't even done radio for 40 years. This is now the longest job I've ever held. But since 2011, December of 2011, I've started my show the very first day I'm on air in December the same way, except I'm saving this for the third hour because there's been so much more important news. Why is Christmas on December 25th? You probably learned that Christians place Christmas on December 25th to co-opt Saturnalia. That's the way I learned it. It's the midwinter festival of the Roman Empire. There's also Sol Invictus, the Feast of the Unconquered Sun, or the Emperor Aurelius or Aurelian, put on December 25th. The theory was essentially Christians were co-opting the pagans by embracing their holidays and applying them to Christian times. It's a very convenient theory. It is the popular theory, but the more I've looked into it and researched it, there's actually a lot of credible research that that's not actually true. In fact, the more credible research is that Emperor Aurelian instituted Sol Invictus on December 25th to co-opt Christianity's belief that Jesus was born that day. There's actually a good bit of data from ancient sources that Emperor Aurelian wasn't sure how to stamp out the growing Christianity. Aurelian actually engaged in a lot of, we talk about the persecutions under Diocletian. The Aurelian persecutions were actually worse and more widespread across the empire. The Diocletian persecutions were bad, don't get me wrong, but they were mostly confined to the eastern half of the empire. Constantius, who was Constantine's father, actually was building a power base. He recognized the Christians as up and coming, and so he controlled the western half of the empire and was not as harsh to the Christians as Diocletian was in the eastern half of the empire. Aurelian before predated them, and he was brutal to the Christians, and the harder he stamped out Christianity, the more popular it became, and so he embraced Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. He was essentially the unknown god. They gave him a name, and they put his birthday on December 25th, well after the time Christians had started celebrating Jesus' birthday on December 25th. So now, follow along with me here. In Egypt, less than 300 years after Jesus' death, Christians were celebrating his birth in the spring. The Biblical Archaeological Society noted the earliest references Christians come to about 200 AD are a time Christians aren't celebrating births. They're actually celebrating deaths. And I misspoke that. Christians were celebrating Jesus' death in the spring. Christians believed that birthdays were pagan holidays. By 300 AD, Christians were celebrating Jesus' birth around December 25th. Within 100 years, Christianity was on the calendar, and Christians formally looked to December 25th very early in church history, about 300 to 400 years into church history. We're looking at December 25th as the date of Jesus' birth, not because they were co-opting pagan holidays, but because they were way more interested in when he was crucified, because you want to get the resurrection date right. So what does this have to do with anything? Well, around 200 AD, that is less than 200 years after Christ's resurrection, Tertullian of Carthage reported that the 14th of Nisan in the year Jesus died was equivalent to March 25th of the Roman calendar. That's Andrew McGowan and the Biblical Archaeological Society came up with March 25th. This is very important. You need to understand, early Christians were more interested in the date of Christ's crucifixion than they were the date of Christ's birth, because they identified birthdays as a pagan celebration. But they also had this belief, Christians did, derived from Judaism at the time, that on the day a prophet dies, it's the day he was conceived. So if you die on June 1st, the early Christians and the Jews at the time believed you had been conceived 9 months prior to that, years before. So if Christ's death was March 25th, the date of Mary's conception, the Immaculate Conception, or I realize you know what I mean. The day the Holy Spirit and Mary conceived Christ would have been March 25th. Go 9 months forward, where do you land? December 25th. The math's pretty simple. 9 months, Tertullian set March 25th would have been the date of the crucifixion, therefore 9 months forward, because the date of death was the date of conception, 9 months forward, December 25th, boom, there you have it. Early church history held as fact the prophets and martyrs of the church were conceived on the day they died, so if Christ died on March 25th, it would have been the anniversary of his conception. Now, separate of that was Tertullian in the western half of the empire. In the eastern half of the empire, they were also trying to find the date. Luke 1 tells us Zacharias, John the Baptist's father, was in the priestly division of Abijah. Based on the calculation of this, the division of priests in the temple on AD 70, when the temple fell, a number of early church historians presume Zacharias would have been in the temple in late September or early October. Later historians speculate it was probably June, but at the time, late September, early October. The Gospel of Luke tells us when Zacharias left the temple, his wife conceived, and then in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God to the city of Galilee named Nazareth to a virgin betrothed to a man whose name was Joseph of the house of David. 6 months after Zacharias left the temple would have been March, Mary's time of conception. Fast forward 9 months, and we again land in December. And then they heard from the western half of the empire, Tertullian had come up with March 25th as the date of Christ's crucifixion. Well, wait a second. We're seeing things align. The eastern half of the empire already believed Christ would have died sometime in late March, so he would have been born sometime in late December. So Tertullian is saying December 25th, March 25th, it all works out. The earliest church fathers in the east and the western halves of the Roman Empire set March 25th as the date of Christ's crucifixion. They believed at the time that the date of a prophet or martyr's death was also the date on which they were conceived. So if March 25th is when they died, March 25th is when they would have been conceived years earlier. You fast forward 9 months, you get to December 25th. And in fact, historically and archaeologically, we find evidence of Christians documenting and making note of Christ's birth on December 25th before the Feast of the Unconquered Sun was even a thing by Aurelian. We also separately know that while there's lots of modern speculation about Saturnalia and the early Christians co-opting it, there were in separate parts of the empire at certain times a refusal to celebrate birthdays because they viewed them pagan, as pagan celebrations. And so while the Saturnalia feast was happening, you had Christians noting Christ being born December 25th based on the date of his crucifixion on March 25th, but they weren't celebrating his birth then. They were just noting, as a matter of posterity, that's when he would have been born, given the date he was crucified, even if they were wrong. And again, I don't really believe that he was crucified on March 25th or was born on December 25th. Those are just dates marked. They were curious. They might have gotten them wrong. We don't know. It doesn't matter. But the point is, the way you and I were both raised, that they were probably co-opting pagan holidays, there's actually a large amount of evidence that's not the case. The overwhelming weight of evidence is actually that that's not true, that they were just making note of when he was born because they were way more interested in the date of crucifixion, because the crucifixion and the resurrection are everything in Christianity. Without the resurrection, Christianity is a very stupid religion. It either happened or we're all dumb. And a lot of atheists believe we're all dumb. But that is why, just so you understand, that is why Christmas is December 25th, because the early Christians believed Christ died on March 25th. You fast forward, you wind up 9 months later, December 25th. And I realize I'm making adjustments for the Gregorian calendar as well. But there you have it. That's it. That's why we celebrate Christmas on December 25th. But now, for those of you, Saturnalia, yeah, okay. There are a lot of people who double down on that argument. I can tell you, though, that the copious amount of research, for anyone who brings up Sol Invictus, that's the unconquered sun, and the moral of the story is the Christians, they were tied to Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. Christ rose from the dead, therefore he was unconquered. Therefore, Aurelian had it December 25th. That's why his birth is. No. Actually, the overwhelming weight of evidence archaeologically and historically is that Aurelian put Sol Invictus on December 25th because Christians were already noting Christ's birth was December 25th because Aurelian was trying to stamp out Christ and tie him to Aurelian's favorite God, who he called the unconquered sun. He was trying to stamp out Christianity. Didn't work. Now, the bigger issue here is not when Christ died or when Christ was born. The bigger issue here is that he is, and we will celebrate him in less than a month. I cannot believe we are almost to Christmas. Welcome back. It's Eric Erickson here from Sea Island. Remember, if you text DATA to 33777, you can get a discount on the show notes. You can see the montage I played at the beginning of the show, all 9 minutes of the media covering for Joe Biden. I got to point out something that's not going to get a lot of traction today. It happened over the weekend. It is every once in a while you get just one story that is a summation of everything else. This is Jill Biden at the White House this weekend unveiling the 2024 White House Christmas tree.
This beautiful Fraser fir was grown at the Cartner's Christmas tree farm, where the Cartner family has been growing trees for more than 60 years. And their farm is nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, a region that was recently devastated by Hurricane Helene. The Cartner family lost thousands of trees in the storm, but this one remained standing, and they named it Tremendous for the extraordinary hope that it represents. It's an honor to be here today with Congresswoman Virginia Foxx, as well as members of the North Carolina National Guard.
So, okay, on the one hand, this is a family tree farm. They've bought a tree from the family tree farm in North Carolina that was devastated, and this tree farm can now say, our trees are good enough for the White House, and that's good. At the same time, just think about the optics of this. Just think about the optics, because the Democrats love to think about optics. You have cut down a tree named Tremendous because it withstood the storm until the government showed up to cut it down. I mean, that's part of that's part of the whole problem, is you have cut down a tree that survived Helene when all the trees around it were felled by the storm. This one survived. It got the name Tremendous because it survived. And so along comes Uncle Sam, who chops it down to put it in the White House, where it's going to be burned on a pile after it's over. They're turned into wood chips for the White House lawn. It's the optics of that. And now, granted, on the other side of this, I do see the argument that this is a family with a tree farm. This is a tremendous bit of pride and joy for them that their tree that withstood the storm gets to go to the White House. But for the White House, the government comes in, this tree survived a hurricane, but could not survive Uncle Sam under Joe Biden, like so many American families. And that is why Donald Trump is headed back to the White House. Now, I need to tell you about Old Glory Bank. They are my bank. Y'all, they were very kind. They were getting a new dog. His name is Max. And the folks at Old Glory Bank heard about it, and they sent us a scarf for Max. They're not just radio partners. I actually bank with them, and I have before I was on radio doing ads for them. In fact, I like the bank so much, I want you to know I've invested in the bank. oldglorybank.com. You can get a bank account there. It takes less than 8 minutes. All you do is go to oldglorybank.com. oldglorybank.com. It takes less than 8 minutes to fill out the form. You can get a business account. You can get a personal account. I have personal accounts. My checking and my savings account are at Old Glory Bank. I genuinely bank with this bank. I love this bank, and you and your family will as well. You can get no-fee checking and no-fee savings. You can get custodial accounts for your kids. You can even deposit cash at Old Glory Bank. They make it very easy with 88,000 retail locations. oldglorybank.com. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions apply. All right, welcome back. The final half hour today. I hope you guys, again, had a great Thanksgiving. By the way, your leftovers, you need to start getting rid of your leftovers like probably tomorrow or so. They're not going to last, folks. They're not going to last. Don't freeze them for 6 months. Just throw out the leftovers. Finish the pie today. I love sweet potatoes. Y'all, I was telling Philip this the other day. The sweet potato is my favorite food. I got to talk about Syria, but I need to tell you all the story. I nearly, within 6 months of my marriage, went to prison for life for murdering my wife. I did not murder my wife. So that's why I'm not in prison. So my wife had never seen Fantasia. So we stayed up one night and we watched Fantasia. The next day, had to get my wisdom tooth out. I wasn't very wise, only had one wisdom tooth. Got it taken out. I argued with him. I'd never had anesthesia in my life. Literally, I'm in mid-sentence, and suddenly I'm talking again, and they are wheeling me out. I'm like, you didn't take my tooth. You didn't take my tooth. I'm a lawyer. I'm going to sue you. Till my wife made me look in the mirror like, oh, I guess they did. So I go home, go to bed that night, and an infection set into my jaw. They had not sent me home with antibiotics. And in the middle of the night, my wife tossed and turned, or at least I thought I was in pain. I hurt. And I remember distinctly telling her that if she did not leave the house to go to work, we had gotten a chef's knife for our wedding, and I was going to take that chef's knife and I was going to stab it through her heart, and she needed to get the blankety blank out of the house. She had kept me up all night. So she went to work crying the whole way to work and got to work. And God bless him, her boss, Walter, at the time, was a lawyer she worked for. And he said, "This is not your husband. This is not your husband's timberman. I know your husband, and this is not him. We need to go check on him." Y'all, I was in the corner with that chef's knife stabbing at the flamingos and the alligators and the hippopotamuses that were visibly, to this day, I see them dancing on the bed. I was hallucinating, and they were out to get me. And my wife and her boss had to calm me down, get me settled, get me in the car, and get me to the doctor's office. And when we got in the door, what is the first thing the nurse says? "Oh, we were about to call. We forgot to send you home with antibiotics." I had to take IV fluids. I had to take intravenous antibiotics. My jaw was shut for a month. My jaw had swelled so much from the infection, I could not open my mouth. I had just, like, as an adult, convinced myself I should start drinking milk again. So milk, mashed potatoes, sweet potatoes, and Frosties. That was my diet for a month. And boy, was it great for weight loss. The moral of the story is I rarely will eat a Frosty now. And I can't bring myself anymore to drink milk because that's all I could consume, really, that water. But y'all, I will eat sweet potatoes until the day. I love sweet potatoes. If I could only eat sweet potatoes for the rest of my life, I'd be orange, but that's what I would do. I could run for president. I would eat sweet potatoes for the rest of I love sweet potatoes. I like roasted sweet potatoes. I liked baked sweet potatoes. I like sweet potato fries. I like sweet potato souffle. I like sweet potato pie. And I made an incredible sweet potato bourbon pie. Instead of using vanilla, I used bourbon in it, and I made a Swiss meringue on top. I baked in the oven. It was gorgeous. It was gone. I went to get some more pie the day after Thanksgiving. It was gone. Everybody else ate it. I was so upset. I was like, I hope nobody else likes this pie because I'm only making one. I got a piece. I want more. I love sweet potato pie. Anyway, side note, I realized completely different. Throw your leftovers away, finish the pie, get stuff out of your refrigerator, make room. Christmas is coming. Now, I got to talk about Syria. You know, for all of the attacks on Israel for what it has done in Gaza, Israel drops leaflets in neighborhoods and says, "We're bombing this area, get out." They call people's cell phones and say, "We're bombing the area, get out." The Russians launched a massive attack in Aleppo in Syria. Massive amount of civilian casualties in Aleppo. For those of you who do not know where Aleppo is, Syria is on the Mediterranean. It is north of Israel and Beirut. Aleppo is the largest city. Damascus is the capital, but Aleppo is the biggest city. Aleppo is in the north, a more mountainous region. It is a beautiful city, beautiful historic city. It is being taken by rebels. Syria has been in the midst of a civil war. And Syria, you should understand this. The Syrian government is run by the Arab Nazi Party, the Baathists. In World War II, the Arab Nazis were called the Baathists. They were on the side of Hitler. They were trained by the Nazis, and they went back to the Middle East. The Ba'athist Party controlled for a time Egypt and Syria as one country. The Egyptians didn't like being controlled by the Ba'athists in Syria. They pushed them out. Saddam Hussein was a member of the Ba'athist Party of Iraq. And Bashar al-Assad and Hafiz al-Assad, his father, they were leaders of the Nazi Party of the Middle East, the Baathists. And they are backed by Iran. It's no surprise. They're backed by Hezbollah. They're backed by the Russians. They are part of that axis of evil. And by multiple reports, Bashar al-Assad he's the son of Hafiz al-Assad, who was the leader there when I was a kid. He was the tyrant who set up that government, a ruthless regime. very tied to the Soviets at the time and now the Russians. And Bashar al-Assad, his son, has now fled Damascus, allegedly gone to Russia. This civil war there, the Americans, to a degree, have been helping rebels, but there's a problem. So Bashar al-Assad is backed by the Russians, Hezbollah, and Iran, and allegedly China and North Korea, although there's limited proof of that. But the rebels are an American-designated terrorist organization. So Israel on the side of the rebels. Turkey on the side of the rebels. The rest of the Middle East on the side of the rebels. The Americans are like, we don't know what our policy is. Yeah, they're not a great group of people, but they're clearly people who are interested in peace with Israel. The problem here is Turkey. Turkey wants to be a regional hegemon. Turkey has been pushing against the new Georgian government. So go to the far east of Turkey. Turkey is bordered by Armenia, which used to be a Soviet province, and Georgia, which was a Soviet province, not the American state. Georgia just had an election where people tied to Vladimir Putin have won, and now the people of Georgia are protesting in the streets. Vladimir Putin has already sent troops to Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia, to suppress people. The Americans and the Turks have been siding with the Muslim government of Azerbaijan against Armenia because they believe Putin is propping up the Armenian government. Armenia, by the way, first Christian nation on the planet. Turkey wants to be a regional power. They're pushing back against the Russians in Armenia and Georgia. They're pushing back against the Russians in Syria. Turkey purported to be our ally, although the Turks don't like the Israelis anymore, but they also don't like the Iranians. The United States, under Joe Biden and Jake Sullivan and Anthony Blinken and Lloyd Austin, have no clue what to do in Syria. This country is collapsing. There will be multiple countries trying to fill the void. The problem for Israel is that Israel increasingly is tied with Greece against Turkey's interests. Greece and Turkey have a long-standing historic rivalry, going all the way back to the Persian invasion of Athens through Turkey. That's how long the rivalry has held. Israel has been siding with the Greeks over territorial claims in the Mediterranean Sea against Turkey. Turkey's been bullying Israel on behalf of Hamas. Turkey is now trying to oust the Russians and the Syrian government and set up a proxy state in Syria. Turkey is a NATO ally, but increasingly out of line with NATO and more in line with Islamic fundamentalism. There's a mess in the Middle East, and Joe Biden is on a beach in Delaware. There's a mess in the Middle East, and Jake Sullivan's nowhere to be seen. We need an articulable policy. And I would suggest to you our first policy should be to find people within the rebel alliance that we can do business with that will provide some stability, because otherwise Iran is known to cut ties and rebuild alliances, and Iran may risk it. The Russians have launched a massive military strike on Aleppo today. They gave no notice, unlike the Israelis in Gaza. They just launched missiles, blew up parts of the city, killed a lot of people, and the White House is stunningly silent about it. There is a major, major issue happening right now, and we need to pay attention to the collapse of Syria. The Russians they're playing to help Bashar al-Assad. They're playing to help the Arab Nazi Party. They're playing to prop up a murderous regime that also works with the Iranians. We need to find some of the rebels. We've been helping the rebels. You know, we've had American operatives in Syria helping parts of this rebel group. The problem is that the totality of the rebel groups are led by a group we consider a terrorist organization, and so we've largely avoided them. We can't avoid dealing with these people. We need to bring some level of peace to Syria. It is a beautiful country with wonderful people. You know, ironically, the Syrians have been running tourism campaigns in the West to try to get people to the coast. They've had an entire segment of social media influencers designated to showing coastal Syria is not at war and a great place to visit. It's time for the Assad regime to die. Now, there are rumors that Bashar al-Assad's brother might be sympathetic to the West and to the rebels. He's still in the country. He could provide some stability. But here's the bottom line. We need to recognize that there are some countries that are never going to embrace our values, but they might be willing to be our friends against the Iranians, the Russians, the Chinese, and the North Koreans. If we can oust the Syrian dictatorship that amounts to a Nazi party in the Middle East and install a regime that is friendly to us and Israel and our NATO ally Turkey and balance them, we'll be better off. The fact that this administration seems to have no idea how to handle the situation is another damning indictment on Joe Biden's foreign policy over this entire time. We should not be surprised at all that Joe Biden doesn't know what to do or how to handle the situation. It's a dangerous, dangerous situation in Syria, and nature abhors a vacuum, so does power. Power will fill it. The question is what power will fill it, and if it's the Turks completely in charge without us having a say in it, it's not going to be good for us because the Turks are less and less aligned with our interests and our allies' interests in the Middle East. Erdogan, the leader in Turkey, wants to be a hegemon. He wants to be a major power, and we got to be mindful of that as well. I also want you to be mindful of Hillsdale College. If you go to ericforhillsdale.com, you watch a very short video on what makes Hillsdale College a unique educational institution in the country. Hillsdale College requires that every student sign an honor code that allows diversity of opinion and honest debate. It's very unique among institutions in the country. It is not a hotbed of anti-Semitism. It's actually a hotbed of liberty in this country, of students, many from the homeschool community, but not just. They go to Hillsdale College because they want to get an education, not an indoctrination. And they've been doing that across the country since 1844. Hillsdale College is a unique educational institution, one of the best in the country. You can go to ericforhillsdale.com, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com, watch a very short video, and then sign up for Imprimis. It is completely free. It'll start coming to your mailbox. I've been getting it since I was in law school. You get Imprimis for free. You get their podcast network for free. You get so much from Hillsdale College for free, and it's also good, also educational, all stimulating. It's just great stuff from Hillsdale College. Go to Eric, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com today. Sign up, watch the video, sign up for Imprimis, get their podcast, get Dr. Arndt's lectures on the Constitution, Victor Davis Hanson on citizenship, ericforhillsdale.com. Sign up today. Oh, my fellow Americans. Okay, let's talk. I'm not even going to play the audio for you. It was bad. The Kamala Harris video where she wants to fight, she looks rough. Let me just put it that way. This isn't a sexist comment. Everybody on the left and the right is like, my gosh, she looks like she's coming off a 10-day bender. Just the jokes about me before Black Friday shopping, me after Black Friday shopping, me before the family came for Thanksgiving, me after the family, and using before and after pictures of Kamala Harris. She looked rough, y'all. She looked rough. I don't know who thought that was a good idea to put out there. What I think is that it was a hit job by people within the Democratic Party. I'm sorry. You can't look at that video and think it's a good idea. You cannot. Objectively, you can't. Even Democrats that I know who are loyal to Kamala Harris were appalled that came out. Here's what I think happened. This is total speculation on my part, but I don't think I think I'm right in the timing here. Kamala Harris did the video, and she wanted the video to be put out, and no one wanted to tell her, we're not going to do it. It'll make you look bad. It'll make you look really terrible. And what often happens is she's still inside the bubble. She's still in the bubble. So she would have never known had they held it back. Or they could have waited a couple days. They could have gone to her and they said, look, we want you to rethink this. Here's why. You don't come across well. You look rough. It's not good optics. But they didn't do that. They put it out. It's not a coincidence that they put it out after a major news story came out, I think in Politico, that Kamala Harris is telling Democrats she intends to run again in 2028 and take on J.D. Vance. The same time, major polling came out from a Democratic pollster showing Kamala Harris is the frontrunner for 2028. That Democrats want to give her another chance. They think she was unfairly maligned, that she didn't have enough time. They've made excuses, 170 days, 107 days, blah, 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 blah. So you put out a poll showing Kamala Harris is the front runner. Stories come out, Kamala Harris is telling Democratic donors she's the front runner. And so the Democrats are like, red alert, red alert, red alert. We got to do something. Launch the nukes, launch the nuke, launch the Kamala Harris video. So they put it out to make her look bad. And it does exactly that. That even Democrats are like, man, this is rough. Is she sober in the video? There's a dispute as to her sobriety in the video. That's how bad the video is. So I think Democrats want to sabotage Kamala Harris moving forward. In fact, James Carville is asking for an audit for her campaign. How do you raise more than $1 billion and find yourself in debt? How do you find yourself in a dire financial strait the way that she has? It's a very bad look for the Harris campaign, very bad look for Kamala Harris, and I think the Democrats completely understand and appreciate just how bad it is. They don't want to have to revisit a Kamala Harris campaign in the future, and I don't blame them. She's not a good candidate, and they've known the whole time she's not a good candidate. All right, I got to go have some big classified meetings with the vast right-wing conspiracy at Sea Island. I will be back live in my own studio tomorrow. You guys have a great rest of the day. AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry. Everybody's talking about it. Billions of dollars invested, so buckle up. The problem is AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less like Uber, 8x8, Databricks, Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/Erickson, ERICKSON. That's oracle.com/Erickson, oracle.com/Erickson. Go check them out today.